Happy New Year's Eve, everyone. I'm going back to see Star Wars The Last Jedi again today. I wasn't looking to go see this movie again. I've seen it 3 times already. I'm going to go see it my 4th time. When we did our non-spoiler review, check it out up here, of The Last Jedi, I did allude to the fact that we would do a spoiler-filled review. In the time since we posted our non-spoiler review, we had a ton of comments on the videos, some personal attacks, some folks that said, I can't believe that you like this movie, others that either loved the movie, and then they hated the people that didn't like the movie, and the people that didn't like the movie hated the people that liked the movie. And I think we've never seen a Star Wars movie as divisive as this Star Wars movie. So, in fairness, I'm going to watch it again, and then we're going to get into what I think, spoiler-wise, for you guys. And we're going to a 10 a.m. showing. Surprisingly, there's cars here besides me, and I'm thinking they're all going to the same movie. 3 hours later, I depart the movies with yet another collectible cup. Alright, so, the beginning of the video was filmed days ago. It's now January 2nd. I'm coming back to this again. I've been on the fence consistently about putting something up because, quite literally, still, the response for The Last Jedi is either a camp of, we love the movie, or we hate the movie, and if you don't like the movie, then the people that like the movie are, you know, kind of chomping down everyone's throat. So, in any event, we're going to get into what I think, and you can feel free to blast me. I've already been getting blasted in the comments from the last videos, etc. But we've never had a topic that folks have been more inquisitive or demanding for us to cover. So I wanted to cover this, hopefully not take 3 years to do so. So I apologize for this long entrance. So here we go. Last Jedi, my overall rating at this point, I think when I came out of the movies, the first time that I saw it, I said it was like a 4 or 4.5. I didn't really know what to think. You know, we went to immediately go see it again. I saw it the next day, and I saw it again last week. I will say The Last Jedi is a good movie. It's not a great movie, and I'm not sure how many great movies we're seeing these days, as opposed to great scenes and sequences, but not an overall great movie or story. And I think the difference of this is Rogue One, in my opinion, is a great movie or a great story from end to end. It tells a very good complete picture with the character and the streams that kind of intersect and go well together, while this has a great story arc involved, but the overall movie itself, I think, is not all that fantastic. If I was asked for a final rating today, I think I would give this movie like a 3 out of 5. And by the way, for those that are asking for any type of ranking where the movie fits in the grand scheme of things, because I think we're all about the rankings with Star Wars. I still have Empire Strikes Back as the best movie in the series, followed by A New Hope. The Force Awakens I have next. I think The Force Awakens is actually a much better story, complete story, than the movie that we have here. And after The Force Awakens, we have Return of the Jedi, we have Revenge of the Sith, and I know when I pushed this out on Twitter, people were asking, like, how could you have Revenge of the Sith up so high? But I think Revenge of the Sith, again, great story. It capped off the momentum of the first 2 prequel movies and really bled into who Darth Vader is and how he became Darth Vader, how Anakin completed his transition. I have Rogue One after that. The Last Jedi is after Rogue One, but before The Phantom Menace, and last but not least is Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones, by far my least favorite Star Wars movie. I would take Jar Jar Binks any day over the stuff that is in Attack of the Clones, and I do realize he's in both movies, just bigger presence in Phantom Menace. So let's talk about what I liked about The Last Jedi. I really like the Luke, Kylo, Rey storyline. I like that storyline a lot. I think if the movie was really just more focused or centric on that, and you kind of cut out a lot of the other storylines that you had to give to people because they were introduced in the other movie, you know, there would be a much better cohesive movie at the end of this, I think. And I think, unfortunately, we've come to accept that in Star Wars it's not just about one character, it's about all of these characters. Some of the key points, and if I'm looking up, it's because I wanted to make sure I covered a couple of bullets here. The opening saber toss, it seems to be the source of much consternation across Star Wars fans, and how could he be so flippant that he took the lightsaber, and people kind of viewing that as, even Rian Johnson taking what J.J. Abrams had built up in the last movie and just kind of throwing it over his shoulder. I didn't see it that way. I'm not sure, what I expected from that scene. There was so much build up to it, obviously, at the end of the last movie, although I don't think that scene really fit at the end of The Force Awakens, so I think that it kind of boxed Rian Johnson in a little bit. But that opening saber toss, it kind of reminds you of, a lot of great stories, whether it's classic American cinema or it's kung fu movies or things like that, where, it introduced this plot of the student kind of begging for training from the master. And I didn't mind that scene. I didn't mind the porgs as well in the story. I think in the great scheme of things, as far as aliens go, and I am a big aliens and creature guy in the Star Wars movies, the porgs served their purpose. I didn't dig the porgs kind of begging not to be eaten. I think that kind of tied into this underlying storyline that played out later in Canto Bight, when you see the other beasts, and I can't remember their names, kind of being whipped. So you kind of get this overall message of treating animals better. And animals aren't food; they're not meant to be treated badly and like racing, like similar to what we've done here in America, at least when it comes to horse racing and dog racing, etc. Going back to Luke, the Luke dying piece, I think, there's a couple things here with Luke that people have called out. One is the dying scene. The other piece is, Luke, for lack of a better term, is kind of portrayed as like a chicken shit in this movie. And I think people were really offended and overly offensive, or overly offended rather, in the grand scheme of things, where people have come back and said, look, you've ruined my childhood. That's not the way Luke Skywalker would be. But my feelings kind of go both ways on this. One is, I can see that whole storyline of him kind of cowering and feeling alone. You're the last of a type, and you've failed at your mission in life. He's not the only one that has sought refuge from what he feared was, the end of the line for Jedi. We've seen that with Obi-Wan. We saw that with Yoda. Both of them retreated to planets not to be heard from again for many years until it was time to rise up. I think the difference here is that Luke didn't rise up to face off against the Resistance, but maybe more so because he still felt the embarrassment of failing with Kylo Ren. I don't know. But him dying in the movie, or his force projection, didn't bother me. I think if, going into this movie, I had already kind of resigned to the fact that, we weren't going to see Luke make it out of this movie. I figured Luke would die at the hands of Kylo Ren. It was one of the things that I had joked most about with my friend Campbell, who went to the movies with us on opening night. And I think he was most disturbed by, maybe Luke joining the dark side. So you didn't get the Luke joining the dark side piece. You did get it kind of teased in the flashback from Kylo Ren, and I think the flashback things were kind of like garbage. It was like garbage TV moments, like, this is my perspective and this is their perspective, and depending on who was telling the story, the Luke looked like he was almost like Emperor, like ravaged face and all, and or he was the surprised and kind of puppy-eyed look when he was retelling the story. But I'm fine with the Luke, reclusive Luke, scared Luke, and being forced into what he could do at the end. I go both ways on the fact that Luke didn't show up on Crate for the final battle. I'm not sure he could have made it there in time. I'm not sure if he knew, you know, I mean, I don't know about the timing. I can't justify that, but him dying because of doing the force projections, I think where people have looked at the movie and said, like, that's ridiculous. They do make reference earlier in the movie when we first see this Jedi ability with Kylo and Rey, and Kylo realizes what's happening and says, you know, how are you doing this to Rey? He says, you're not strong enough to do this. You'd kill yourself. But it kind of goes to show just how strong Luke was, that he was able to full projection himself to Crate. And we also saw through the projections that nuances of the projections were actually physically touching each other. So we saw Rey and Kylo touch each other. We saw Kylo at one point retain water in his hand from when Rey was sitting with him on Ahch-To. So, you know, I can imagine Luke sustained severe damage from the battle with Kylo, even though he wasn't there in person, as well as, you know, the ability that it took to force project over there. So I'm fine with him dying. Here's one thing to consider, and I'm sure this has escaped most folks' train of thought. Alec Guinness looked like a feeble old man as Obi-Wan in A New Hope, and that's the way we were introduced to him. Alec Guinness was actually younger at the time of A New Hope than Mark Hamill was, or is, while filming The Last Jedi. So, you know, to think that the movies should have continued to be about Luke Skywalker and his adventures, you know, instead of being able to pass the torch, I think is really not a lot of, it's nonsensical. This new trilogy is not about Luke and Han and Leia. It's about passing the torch to other folks, which I think was done fairly well. Same way that Alec Guinness, you know, even though we didn't see the prequel trilogy version of Obi-Wan prior to A New Hope in 1977, we did see that character eventually, their story arc through the prequels and the Clone Wars, etc., into what he eventually became in A New Hope. But he definitely passed the torch to Luke at that time, the same way that Luke is kind of passing the torch to Rey in this series. The other stuff that I did really like, because I know I'm eating up a ton of time here and I want to be cognizant of how much time I'm spending on stuff, I really loved the battle with the Praetorian Guards. We didn't get a full-on lightsaber battle this time around. I think The Force Awakens gave us the best lightsaber battle in any of the movies to date. But in this movie, we got a lot of action with the Praetorian Guards. You know, I enjoyed seeing that scene. I didn't necessarily like the scene, you know, where the saber is turning and killing Snoke, but the battle between the guards and Rey and Kylo teaming up, it's something that I had forecasted for quite a while in prior videos, ever since they did that kind of behind-the-scenes trailer bit on StarWars.com a while back. But in any event, Last Jedi behind-the-scenes featurette had two really interesting scenes of Rey and Kylo Ren separately doing exercises or practices for lightsaber battles. Both of them were battling off multiple enemies at the same time, or opponents at the same time. The reason why I thought that was interesting is that even though they were in two different clips, I wonder if both of them pair together to fight off a mob of people. I did love that battle. I love the way that it was filmed, and I love the two of them working together. Which brings up another thing that I love was the camera angles themselves. Throughout the movie, there were great shots all around. It was well filmed. We had a lot of really wide angle shots, which were phenomenal. The battle shots were great. You know, some of the space battle stuff kind of reminded me more of video games, but some of the shots where it kind of trailed things like Poe's X-Wing when it comes in the beginning and kind of like almost like basically stops. It's like, you know, almost like a handbrake, and came back around. I thought that looked really cool. The handheld shots, like when we get into the ditch, you know, outside of the base at Crate, and you see Gareth Edwards in there as well. I think that Rian Johnson kind of borrowed that film type from Rogue One and from what Gareth did in that movie. It looked really well done. I wish there was more of that, especially during the attack scene where the folks are leaving, and I don't know the name of the spaceships that they were using when they go to attack, like the walkers that are coming in. So those are things that I liked. Basically, I liked the Luke Skywalker, the storyline, and I liked Kylo, and I liked Rey, and I'm interested to see like where that goes. I don't know where it goes for the next movie, but I did like that. What I didn't like the opening scene comedy with the Hux stuff on the bridge and Poe. I think that stuff would kind of be really dated over time. I think it was very Marvel-esque in what they were going for. I don't think it fit in Star Wars. I think what it also ended up doing with Hux throughout the movie, it kind of made them seem like they're inept. They're like Keystone Cops, and between Hux at times or Kylo Ren at times, you kind of wonder like what was Snoke ever thinking if he's leading this entire First Order. Why would he have chosen those guys? They're far more competent people on the bridge that we've seen in the movies that should be leading things. Hux is a failed comedy routine in it himself, I think, from what I can see. The other scene that I really hated, I think it's the worst scene ever in Star Wars, is the Leia flying Mary Poppins Superman type thing. I think leading into this movie, we had all been told that Princess Leia makes it out, and she's, her story doesn't end in The Last Jedi. It'll continue to be told in the next movie. And then we see the bridge blown apart. So the bridge has sustained a massive explosion. So much so that, Admiral Akbar flies into space. We never hear another word about Akbar whatsoever. War hero back for the last 40 years from when they blew up the Death Star 2, but never to be heard or seen of again. Great putting him in there for a moment. Leia, we're led to believe that maybe she used the Force to bring herself back to the ship. But if she's using the Force to go back to the ship, then you wonder, they've had 40 years, wouldn't Luke have trained her? I mean, he already told her that she was a Jedi also, and we know that, basically, what we were told in the first trilogy of movies, the original trilogy, that it takes years, and Luke was too old to start the training, and, kid, and even in the prequels, that these kids are snatched from their parents early on and taught, and it takes forever, and all that kind of flew out the window in Star Wars mythology over the years. I mean, when you look at like Ezra, in Rebels, or we look at these other characters like Rey, I mean, for God's sakes, Rey never had a single lick of Jedi training whatsoever, and she's, defeating Kylo Ren. So, I find it hard to believe that, if that Leia didn't receive some type of training, or that maybe that she did, but then why would you need Luke when the first two movies here in this new trilogy are chasing after Luke to be the hero? So, more so than anything else, the fact that she's all the way out in space, I mean, they clearly show, like, not only was she part of this ridiculous bridge explosion that destroyed that part of the ship, but she's also a good, maybe, a half a mile out from the ship or so, frozen, and still manages to fly back. It's absolutely, it took me so out of the movie, because I thought, man, they really swerved us here. Like, Princess Leia does die on the bridge, and you start to feel bad. I'm like, oh man, I'm getting a little choked up here watching this, and oh, wait, no, she's not gonna die. She's gonna fly back with her eyes closed. It looks, it's so stupid. It almost makes the movie as bad as Attack of the Clones if I just focused on that scene alone. It's so stupid. The other stuff that I didn't like, I did not like the Finn, Rose, and Canto Bight scene whatsoever. That whole story arc. I think it runs like 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. If you took those characters out of the movie altogether, the movie would be much shorter and much better. I don't think that those scenes or that storyline really did much for The Last Jedi whatsoever. You know, Canto Bight seems to be the big thing that Lucas, or I don't know if it's Lucas or Disney, whoever wants to try to promote because they want to be able to sell more toys or say like, hey, you know, Mos Eisley Cantina was the best when it came to, you know, this is a haven where you're going to see all of these cool aliens, and we built toys based off of all of these guys that had no names whatsoever, and you know, when the original movie came out, except afterwards we were like, hey, it's like the shark guy, and that's this guy, and this thing, you know, and we tried to rebuild this in Maz's castle, you know, or Maz's, you know, area last year, or last movie rather, and I don't think it worked all that well, but now, you know, we're going to do it again. And these aliens were not particularly interesting. It's basically like very humanoid-like and very, you know, Las Vegas-y like. But more so than that, coming into this movie, I was told by friends that are part of the Lucas Enterprise, like, you know, maybe you really want to check out that Canto Bight book because there's going to be a lot of cool payoffs from the book. So I scrambled to read the book. Going into the movie, the book is awful. I wondered, like, why the hell am I reading this book? Because Canto Bight was uninteresting in the book, uninteresting in the stories, and then it was uninteresting when we got to it. And the story altogether about needing to find this guy who's this, you know, master hacker and type of thing, I thought was just ridiculous. It wasted so much time in the movie, and it literally just kills the pace. I did really like DJ. I did like Benicio del Toro. I think that the character, though, was very similar to the one that he played in The Usual Suspects, and I might be dating myself, but if folks have not seen The Usual Suspects, you may want to check that out. A lot of the same mannerisms and the same dialect and the way that it speaks. But I like the character type that DJ portrayed. He's kind of like, if you played Star Wars Galaxies years back, you know, I had a friend, lifelong friend that I've made through Star Wars Galaxies. He was a smuggler, slicer individual. I felt like that character was like walking right out of Star Wars Galaxies. Portrayal was perfect and very, very much a swindler. I think done better than even Billy D. Williams as Lando Calrissian, where you just kind of go wherever the money goes. I like that a lot. But, you know, I wish that there was a way that that character could exist without the rest of the Canto Bight Finn stuff. I mean, you get to the point with, like, Finn, when they're racing towards the new Death Star. I mean, it's funny because, you know, everyone jokes around like, God, can there not be another Death Star in this movie? And we end up with, yet, just a part of a Death Star, just the part that we care about, and that's the cannon that's going to blow apart this door. But as the ships are racing towards there, and Finn is going, and all of a sudden the score drops and you just hear, you know, like silence, and you're kind of in the cockpit with Finn. I just sat and thought, like, they should kill this guy. He serves no purpose whatsoever. And then, you know, this love triangle with Rose, and Rose, how when she comes, first of all, Finn, you know, when he drags Rose back to the hole in the door to get medical attention, I mean, they were flying for a good, you know, 15 minutes or so, and you have to imagine that those ships are going much faster than conventional airplanes. So it has to be, you know, dozens of miles to, you know, if not hundreds of miles to be able to get to where the ships were, and yet he managed to walk back in like 10 minutes with Rose. So, and, you know, I guess you give a pass on that, but overall, I didn't care if she died. I didn't care if he died. I don't care like what those characters do. She was a maintenance person on the ship, and then when you know, when she's coming back initially from Snoke's ship, you know, Poe and everybody are treating her like she's like this general or admiral. Like, oh my God, Rose is back. What have you got for us? Utterly stupid. The Phasma scene with Rose and Finn, I thought was absurd. I think that's when you start to really get to the point where during the movie where I'm like, how much worse could this get? Captain Phasma, I appreciate that character. I think that they really built up Phasma in The Force Awakens to be this kick-ass, amazing stormtrooper. that never hit the mark. And the criticism was that Phasma was on screen and off screen just as fast as she appeared, and we didn't really see what had happened to her. And we were promised, like, oh, she's gonna have a much bigger role this time around, and basically had the same type of role as the last time, except it's even more embarrassing that she gets bested by an average stormtrooper. There's nothing special about Finn whatsoever, other than him being, a turncoat on the Imperials, or the First Order. But the Phasma scene, as they start to go and they're fighting and the stormtroopers are looking to take out, I am always amazed at how ridiculous it is that when two main characters or major characters are fighting, how all of the other ancillary kind of soldiers and everything just stand there and watch. It's so incredibly dumb. And at the outcome, they wanted to kill Finn and Rose. They have this explosion, and then we have the most absurd other scene besides Leia flying with BB-8, who is now a superhero and can maneuver a chicken walker with no hands or arms or anything else, and is firing at stormtroopers. Finn is now fighting with Rose, behind him, Captain Phasma, and none of the stormtroopers turn around and take a shot at Finn. Is out in the open, but they don't care about that. All 20 stormtroopers or so are all focused on trying to kill this little robot or droid that is piloting this chicken walker. It's beyond me. It is so stupid. And to further with the BB-8 thing, besides the fact that he's driving the chicken walker, but you get to the other scene in the beginning of the movie when, Poe is in danger and needs to take out that last tower, on the dreadnought. BB-8 literally uses his head to jam into the wall. I was waiting for the line to come, like, that's using your head. So stupid. But I am so over BB-8. Alright, so, probably the other big thing that folks are really critical of, and I am as well, is that, we had a lot of open-ended things from J.J. Abrams in The Force Awakens that were not closed out properly in The Last Jedi. The Snoke stuff, where we spent the better part of the last 2 years kind of, guessing as to, who is Snoke, and, we were consistently told by Lucasfilm and the story group, etc., that Snoke is Snoke, and he's not the Emperor, he's not these other people and everything, but you don't get the backstory of Snoke in this movie. As well as Rey's parents. We hear that they're paupers, they're nothing, and she was nothing. She was, sold for drinking money for alcoholics, and they're in this grave somewhere on Jakku. I don't know if that's true, or if that's another swerve, but I would say, as far as the Snoke thing goes, right now, on face value, it kind of seems like another typical J.J. Abrams type move, if you're a fan of Lost. And we built up these fantastical things in Lost throughout the series. If you're not a fan, we had this smoke monster, and why is the island, and how is this working, and so forth. And we get to the end of the series, and things that we were told that the show was not about, typically it ended up being kind of about that, and the other things just kind of fell flat. And I guess maybe some of that is to be expected. J.J. Abrams still is the executive producer of this movie, so it's not like he didn't know what was going on. But with Snoke, I'm sure that we have more to come. If you guys buy the visual dictionary, I think it's the visual dictionary or visual guide to the Last Jedi. This is the other thing. You need a ton of books and things to kind of reference to figure out what exactly is happening here. We already know, if you guys follow Pablo Hidalgo on Twitter at all, the novelization of The Last Jedi comes out, I think, in March, and it's going to contain parts that were cut out of the movie. So fans are already questioning whether you should look at the novel as canon or look at the movie as canon. We're kind of being told the movie is canon because that was the final product. But in these other books, like the visual guide or the art of the movie, etc., you get these other nuances, like here's Snoke's slippers. And the reason why Snoke needs slippers is because it's so powerful, it's so painful, rather, for him to stand up. And there's a ring that he wore that was made out of obsidian that was from beneath Darth Vader's castle on Mustafar. Things that have, never been said in the movie, and you got to read between the lines and kind of take all of these other pieces together in order to watch these movies nowadays. That's not enjoyable to a common fan, so I can greatly understand why there's so much criticism about the movie. You know, if Episode 9 does anything, I would hope that it closes all of these loose ends. I don't want to see a whole trilogy on Snoke. I do want to understand, you know, where he came from, and for those that don't follow along, there is kind of a symbol on the floor of the ancient Jedi temple that Luke walks through, and it's shown in the movie a couple of times between when Luke walks through or Rey walks through on the floor. There is a symbol of a person with a misshapen head, looks very much like Snoke, that's divided in half, with a light side and a dark side, kind of meaning like this was the first Jedi or the first Order, which kind of alludes back to Snoke. So kind of opens that whole storyline of Snoke was there when the Emperor was there. He was there when Darth Sidious was there, or Darth Plagueis. He was there when Darth Vader was around. He was there for Skywalker and for Yoda, etc. He has seen everything. He's not the good. He's not a Sith. He's not a Jedi. He's just dark, which I think they're trying to get to in these movies, is that there's not, you know, there's not a Jedi or Sith going forward. There's just good and bad, or light and dark. I'm not sure why we need to get away from the Jedi and Sith terms. The other character I didn't really care for, Hato, I think I'm saying the name right, Laura Dern's character. I hate in these movies when they just bring somebody from out of nowhere, and, you know, all of a sudden, you know, Leia's going to be incapacitated for a good chunk of the movie, and they're just like, well, here's this other character that's going to sub in for Leia. We've never heard of her before, but we're going to insert her here. She's going to run things, and we're going to have this other, you know, storyline that kind of dovetails with this Finn and Rose storyline altogether too. I didn't particularly like her character. I did like the end scene for her with the ship colliding into the First Order ship. I thought that special effect was really cool. I did see in some movie theaters, comically enough, that they posted a sign to say that the film is not broken, that at X time during the movie there'll be a scene where it's complete silence, because people were misinterpreting it, thinking that the movie was broken. But I just was not a fan of that character. I think, you know, there's a way to build support characters, even if they need to be on the screen shorter. And George Lucas did a good job at that in the original trilogy and even in the prequel trilogy. But I think we're struggling here in this new trilogy. What else can we talk about? The Force timing instead of face timing. Like I said before, I think that was a really cool concept. I like seeing new Force abilities. It's really cool to be able to see that it's not limited to just whatsoever. Although I thought it was kind of interesting that, like, when Rey and Kylo are fighting the Praetorian Guards, why they don't use the Force push as well, you know, or to just kind of push these guys when they were choking them and everything. Like, they could just basically, like, Force push these guys away from them. They didn't do that. But the Force timing I thought was pretty cool. I thought it was really interesting that the Force ghosts now are interacting with the physical environment. So, you know, we saw Yoda on Ahch-To talking to Luke, use his cane and literally hit him, and then also create the lightning that caused the fire, and then create like the backdraft in the fire so that it would blow Luke away out of the tree. Which kind of begs the question that if Force ghosts can physically interact so much with the environment, why did we need Luke to rise up against the Emperor and Vader back in the original trilogy if Force ghosts could have just done it themselves? Like, you know, basically, you know, we were worried about Luke failing and then saying, well, no, there is another, when, you know, Obi-Wan and Yoda could have taken care of it themselves if they could have interacted with the physical environment. Very weird. I think that part of the Force thing really needs to be explained further in the next movie, because I don't think you can cherry pick when it is applicable or not. Because certainly if it's still applicable, then, you know, Luke dying has no impact whatsoever, because he can come back as a Force ghost and still just fight everybody. You know, I think the biggest open question at the end here is, where does the franchise go from here? we had a logical conclusion basically in this movie to this new trilogy, other than seeing the escalated ongoing battles of the First Order and the Resistance, or I guess maybe it could be the New Republic, or I'm not sure what names they're going for at this time, but I'm not sure or clear on like where does it go. I'm not sure that I'm really chomping at the bit to find out where it does go, based off of this last movie, because I think this movie kind of tied things up. I mean, obviously, these movies were about passing the torch, and we had Han pass the torch, and then we had Luke pass the torch. Unfortunately, Leia's not here to pass the torch, so we'll most likely get something from her in a crawl heading into the next movie. But I'm not sure how it ends, other than establishing that we have more Jedi or more light, force-sensitive folks out there to train, and maybe the same thing for the dark side. I just kind of get up out of that movie and wonder, like, where do we go? It didn't have a cliffhanger end. It wasn't like a Luke Skywalker looking off into the distance, like we're going to go find Han type of ending. We didn't have, I don't think we have anything to jump from one movie to the next. So I'm not sure where JJ goes for the next movie. It seems like it's closed out for now. But I think that's going to close this out for now. These were basically my thoughts for the movie. Again, I would give it like a 3 out of 5 altogether. I'm sure folks are going to disagree. Some folks either going to disagree and say I rated it too high, and other folks are going to disagree and say I rated it too low. But in any event, next up, 5 months from now, Solo, which, by the way, I've said this before on social media, and I've said it on this channel, I am not looking forward to Solo. I don't need to see every last detail of every character in Star Wars, and I think it's really just another way for Disney to try to make money on characters that were popular and successful in the story itself. My own opinion is that when you start watering down things with characters that we've loved for specific reasons, and you add other details to them that you may not like out of the solo or standalone movies, and ends up taking away from the legacy from the original movies that we saw them in. So anyway, we're going to sign off for now. So thank you very much for listening to me ramble. Let me know your thoughts below. And thank you very much for all of your likes and your comments and your subscriptions. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Have a great night. We'll see you guys.